Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Kaga. So, I know it looks like World of Warship, it sounds like World of Warships, but trust me, today is going to be something a little bit different. I promised you a new video series, and I'm going to deliver on that. And today is the very first episode of that series, so it is my pleasure to introduce to you the Gamer's Art of War. That's right, we're going through it at long last. I know it seems like it's been a while since first introduced that poll, but we're finally here, finally ready to unveil it to y'all. And purpose of this week is twofold. One, we're going to go ahead and start diving straight into interpreting this classic piece of military strategy literature. And of course, we're going to get you used to the way that we're going to do things in this video series. And of course, I'd like to right off the bat announce that we will do our best to get this up every Tuesday and Friday. So please look forward to that to come. Alright, now let's show you what you're in for. So, you're going to see something quite like this every so often. And this is just paying homage to the way the actual text, The Art of War by Sun Tzu, is actually written. And most accounts will translate it as thus, so I will pay the same respects to the original text that every other source you will find in any common bookstore or most other places online will also observe this format. So, without further ado, let's get a rollin', shall we? Master Sun said, "The art of war is of vital importance to the state. It is a matter of life and death, a road either to safety or to ruin. Hence it is a subject of inquiry which can on no account be neglected." Now, I know that is a lot of material to take in, and I will be the first to admit that when it comes to reading The Art of War, once is not enough. Just hearing it in a few seconds, not enough. So we're going to go through it in a little bit of depth, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the situations, and we'll go piece by piece by piece, more or less the way I broke it up on the frames that you just saw. And that way, you're familiar with it, so that when it comes time for you to, if you feel so inclined, to review the main text sometime later on, you have a bit of a context already and can get a head start on interpreting that more towards other situations than the ones I'm describing, because The Art of War is one of those great texts that, yes, it was written for military strategy, but you can apply it every which way. And enough blathering on from me on that general specific. Wow, I must be tired. Yeah, enough talking about stuff that you could just as easily look up online. Let's get on to business. That first part, when it's saying the vital importance of the methodology of war, it's speaking about, at least within the context of our gaming pursuits, not just any one type of gaming, but in this particular one applies to all gaming. It speaks towards, it has this lasting quality. That is, how we conduct ourselves in combat has this lasting impact on our stay, if you will, our quote-unquote stay in a given game. If we play at a high level, then we will enjoy our time better and for longer. Conversely, if we play at a lower level, then we shouldn't expect such long-term success, and we should expect more frustration along the way that will stifle any longer term enjoyment of the game. And certainly it might not even come at all, depending on that quantity called success in this discussion. In particular, you've probably had some experience with this when you first start out a game. I know one of, at very least in wargaming type products, actually, it's not really just wargaming. This kind of applies not only towards their like World of Tanks and World of Warships, but also to games like War Thunder and Obsidian Entertainment's Armored Warfare. Is that you kind of notice that you reach a point where the game just kind of starts hammering down on you, and you've probably remember that in the beginning. And if you started with some friends, you probably noticed that if they didn't have as much success as you did, their partaking in the game probably fell off, and you've probably found yourself sitting there twiddling your thumbs going, well, I guess it's time for another round, except that you're looking for other players to enjoy it with. And you've probably noticed that, there are some people who can just make progress up the research lines faster than others, or perhaps you noticed that you progress faster up specific ones versus others. And this is barring the inclusion of things like premium time and premium tanks, free experience conversions, all that stuff. Just talking about that straight abilities. I know that both of these quantities seem a little abstract, but I assure you that within these two cases illustrate that our, if you will, art and methods of approaching particular rounds and gaming in general hold a long-term and somewhat lasting impact on how we interact with the game. And of course that leads to how we interact with the community at large. And I know I'm talking about how these choices we make in digital environment seem to have very tangible outcomes. And in some respects they are tangible. We feel them in just as much of every time we log in to the little meters that we see on the progress screens, the results screens, the tech tree screens, research screens, whatever have you. But at the same time, they're kind of not. But they're enough of a metric that we can start looking at this going, yes, there is something here. And that leads me on to the second part. And yes, I have actually been grouping this more or less into chunked ideas that lead from one to another within this discussion. I know it seems kind of random. I know it does, but we're going somewhere with this. These tangible impacts that we see on the battlefield going not just in that immediate short-term success, but in long-term success, are effects that can be felt not just by looking at that little I move up the tree faster or I gain experience faster. It's also in the sense that in all likelihood you'll be doing better overall, not just in gaining experience, grinding through the tech lines faster, but also the general state of your, if you will, garage or your hangar or your port. You generally find yourself in a just more of a surplus situation than a shortage, and you're less of likely going to find yourself going, do I want to upgrade this vehicle or that vehicle? And generally speaking, this state of having to make a trade-off reflects, well, it tends to reflect our abilities in combat. That is, unless we're grinding like 15 different lines because we can. Reasons, right? And because we've brought up these effects in experience and in credit potential, it's really worth noting here that how these methods and the results that they gain are very unique. And I mean that in the sense that each one of us will probably see a slightly different combination of the returns on these methods. And that's partly to do with the fact that we will approach about a given battle in different ways, but there's also the RNG processes that generate these results, and I do refer to damage. And when you take the sum of these two, you will find yourself that over thousands of games that even people of similar abilities will find that they will naturally, and I do quite mean this is just natural, that one person may find themselves with a faster XP earning than a similar player making similar decisions in a similar situation, but that other person may somehow have more credits in the long term, because reasons. It's just the way the economies usually work. And I bring up those two situations because those are quite common the case that either you have too much experience and not enough credits, or too many credits and not enough experience to progress. And these are just two of the potential outcomes that our methodology in approaching our games impacts us in a more passive setting. Well, not really passive per se, but I think you get the idea that this is removed from the battlefield itself, and it's something that exists more in the long term than in the tactical short term. And speaking of this idea of thinking in time, let's put that hypothetical situation together where you've probably seen, and I know I've seen it a number of times, the case where I guess you could almost call it the YOLO situation, or the Sua Scout situation, or I guess another one would be the takes a chance too far, where, like in using World of Tanks as an example, someone has been poking in and out of a position, playing peekaboo with their enemy, and they do it once too often, and they get hammered by artillery. Now, I know some of these seem like very fleeting moments in time, but trust me, they do happen, and they happen quite often. And they don't have to be as extreme as the ones I mentioned. They can be very minor things that change the entire dynamic for the team. And even if they don't seem like it at first, when you play the decisions out in time, they have that tendency of coming back to bite you. And usually when things like that happen, you find yourself in that weird situation that you're probably going to lose the match. And it's for moments like this that Master Sun reminds us that we must never lose sight of the necessity to apply his principles. And I mean this in the respect that even if we are in a short-term disadvantage, even if we suffer a defeat in the short term, so long as we stay focused and we keep true to our methodology of war, and in this respect, in bringing the best game that we have at that moment, so long as we stay true to that, what can be a very short-term, or maybe not so short-term, set of defeats as a result of these decisions from other players, that in the long term you still win. And I mean that in the respect that, if you recall when I was just talking about these decisions having impacts towards like our port coffers, our garage stores of silver, things like this, and keeping those in mind, and also keeping in mind the experience game here, that by bringing the best game that we have at that instant and staying true to not only what we see as appropriate combat, but also to the precepts of war in general, in the long term, over thousands of games, we will see that more often than not that one, we will win more times than not in those situations, and that gives us the ability to say that yes, we have the strength to carry a certain type of team or most teams. But it also means that you will have the ability to still earn the experience that it might not be the most experience that you want out of that round, but you're still able to earn enough that you can say that it was worth playing that. And the same for your silver. It's the same thought in that as well. But there's one more thing to take from this. By always bringing your best game, you are always learning. And I say that in the respect that when you don't bring your best game, it's probably because you've allowed yourself to get into a mental state where the enemy is basically dictating what you think for you, or they've rustled your jimmies enough that you're no longer thinking straight. And the next time you see a similar situation, because where we play these games a lot, you're going to see very similar situations pop up very often. Well, maybe not very often in some cases, but often enough to remember them. That if a situation similar to the one that led to your defeat comes up again, that you will be prepared to, or at least more prepared than you were the first time, to be able to come out of that battle on the victorious side. And this entire line of thought follows that with good preparation comes good results, and with good results comes confidence, and with confidence comes further bettered results. And now I know that's a bit of a weird way to think about it, but we have to start somewhere, right? And this is once you've gotten past the basic mechanical aspects of the game, this is the start towards developing that mental state of awareness and mental sharpness. And I don't mean that in the sense of being able to whip out logarithm tables in your head, but I mean this in the sense that there's a mental clarity that allows you to act in any situation. So thank you for having bared with me for over 18 minutes at this point. This series is going to be a bit of a interesting blend of what amounts to military philosophy, when appropriate history, and of course, because we're calling it the Gamer's Art of War, it's going to feature some gameplay content. And of course, it will kind of vary based on what I have available at the time. It will also, I'm going to try to pick gameplay that is somewhat pertinent. In particular, just as an example, I chose this particular replay because it's not a spectacular one, and it wasn't exactly favorable for my particular team because of the enemy disposition in comparison to our own, and I do mean the actual team composition did not really favor us, but we still managed to come out on top. Now I have one question to pose to you all. The format of the video. Would you prefer this particular format where I go through the various lines of the text at the beginning and then just talk about it for the remainder of the gameplay, or would you prefer the instance that I basically pause the whatever replay I have playing in the background, go over the text, then continue playing it while I describe that particular one? Please let me know which of the two options you'd like to see in the future. let's go ahead and turn that to the comments box, please. And of course, I think now is a great time to open this up to everybody, since I now no longer have to worry about how to get Armored Warfare stuff in. We will be opening up the subscriber spotlight segments a little bit more often on the channel. If you'd like to submit something to possibly get up on the channel, the email address that you're going to want, it can be found both in this particular video's description box and on Facebook. So please make certain to note that, or you know where to find it if you have a game in the future you'd like to see on the channel. And on that note, I'll conclude today's video by again reiterating that this video series will pick up on Friday. So once again, thank you, and I bid you a good day and a good start to your week.